The Outreached Hand by Nancy Cohen. For years she sat alone at the river's edge, crying into the long brush that kept her hidden from the fish. Her thoughts were hers to hold, turn over, dissect, and eventually discard into the water. She didn't want to burden anyone with her problems. After all, she felt she had brought them all on herself, and no one in the history of her species could be as bad, thoughtless, and guilty as she. Then one day, while carrying a load of twigs back to her small cottage, she saw an old woman lying on the side of the road, her apple cart turned over, her horse running down the hill, happily escaping its burden. She hadn't spoken to anyone for years and wasn't even sure she could remember how to say, "What happened here?" But she gestured and was rewarded with a groan and huge smile from the elder. With a deft hand, she helped the old woman to her feet and assisted her in walking to wherever the fruit needed to go. On the way, they munched apples, and the old woman asked her many questions about herself. She had not been used to talking about herself to anyone but her own mind, let alone in a new language. And though nervous at first, within a short amount of time began to spill out her entire personal history. All it seemed to take was an interested set of ears. After several hours, they reached a clearing, and beyond the big pine was the place the woman said she lived. "Please come with me," she asked. "You can't go this far on a journey without stopping to rest, and this will give me time to properly thank you." Our lonely girl wanted to turn quickly away and run, but she had gotten used to the sound of the older woman's voice and the sighs and ahas she had uttered while listening to all of her pent-up stories. Together they carefully went down the hill to the small encampment. The light in the deep valley bounced off the hills, giving the place an unusual green color. And though the homes were humble, there were bright flowers everywhere, and the wind seemed to carry the sound of little bells chiming. One by one the residents came to greet the old woman, relieved to see her after so long and curious about her new friend. These beings were unlike anyone she had ever seen in her part of the world. She was amazed at the array of unusual color. Their shapes and sizes varied tremendously, and they all acted as if they actually enjoyed being together. She noticed, too, that they were constantly helping each other by laying pretty cloths down on deep puddles for the weak ones who might easily tumble, lifting the shorter ones way up in the air to grab a ripe peach, and even laughing at each other's jokes, no matter how unspectacular she personally found them. This was a world she had always dreamed of, a feeling she had craved but felt impossible to have in her own life. She accepted for a long time that it was her lot to go solo and hold her thoughts to herself. Yet part of her couldn't shake the belief that somewhere and somehow freedom and unity were possible. But before this moment, she had found no evidence to counter her reality, and thus had spent her time inside her head, not really free at all. Now her mind had expanded and given her this vision of something unique. The old lady took her hand and bid her enter the small cottage where a room was laid ready for her, a soft sleeping mat on the floor, and a cover made of what looked like resting butterfly wings. A small stool sat in the corner, and she plopped down on it, amazed at how she felt. Looking up, she noticed a sign on the wall, wet from having just been painted. The letters were big and bright, and though she couldn't decipher its meaning, she knew it was important. Later, after she had become fluent in the language and nuances of this new place, had shared and supported others in this community, and had been supported in turn by them, she finally understood its meaning. Home.